Yeah.
Oh, there he's back. Okay.
I'm back in the share.
You're back. Okay, let's start the share. Pirkei Avos, the fifth parak, Pirkei Avos, Mishnah Ches, I'm sorry. Numberings in Pirkei Avos are always a challenge because this is Mishnah Hey. Each version of Pirkei Avos I know has a different numbering system for the Mishnayos. Only because those who combine them and those who don't combine them. Kol Yisrael yesh lam chayk l'olam haba, shenemar Amar kulam tzadikim l'olam yesh oros neitzim atoyim masi od l'spor. The introduction to every pair of learning Mishnah is that famous quote from the Masechet Sanhedrin. Kol Yisrael yesh lam chayk l'olam, every Jew has a chayk l'olam haba. We understand that means that there is a piece of Torah which is unique to each one of them. And our purpose in our coming to this world is for us to be able to discover that piece of Torah which is unique to us. Nobody else can be mechadish. We've talked about it a number of times that this is one of the basic premises of how Klal Yisrael was mechabel the Torah, that every one of the 600,000 root neshamas that were at Har Sinai has a parallel letter in the Torah. And if you know what your letter in Torah is, you'll see that defines what used to be what the Chelik Torah. But we are unfortunately short on visionaries who can look at the Torah that way. But nevertheless, there is this part of our essence of who we are as Klal Yisrael. One of us a piece of Torah to be discovered in this world. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Amir Chulam Tzadikim, every person has a piece of himself which is the tzaddik. And the Moranim says one place, it says, the Gemara says that Rishonim Malayim Charata, that Rishonim are filled with remorse. She says that, and it says, and on the other hand, it says, anybody who says, I'm going to sin and then do tshuva, they're not given enough power to do tshuva. He says it works the other way around. That anybody who's going to do an avera and is in their heart is already thinking about doing tshuva, he's not going to enjoy his avera too much. You can't enjoy an avera if all you can think about is, oh my goodness, I'm going to have charata afterwards. He says, Ema speaking, it's not enough. They make sure that for it, that piece of Torah that charata will always force a person ultimately to do it. It's that remorse inside, that chelik Torah inside of each one of us, it compels us. Oh, there's Ezra there. The piece of Torah that we're compelled to find within ourselves, and it compels us to do tshuva. There's a similar thought that's brought down in by the Derech Mitzvah. He says, he asked the question, he says, we know that everything in this world is sustained by this the sparks of Kedusha that brings the world. Nothing can exist in a world without the Ratzon of Hashem being there. So you can find Hashem in everything in this world. So he says, so what happens when a person eats straight? What happens to those holy sparks? Because normally what we say is the way that we massage, the way to elevate those sparks is by saying no. We say no, we're not going to over the loyal or the sas and Torah. That's the tikkun. What happens when a person eats straight? What happens to those sparks? So the Tzemach Tzedek says that spark sits inside of a person because he ate it. It's now sits inside him and will force him to do tshuva because it's a holy spark. So if we follow that premise, the purpose of learning Pirkei Avos is in order for each one of us to find that spark. And that's why this is the introduction to Pirkei Avos. Hashem said, I planted that seed inside of you. My siyadal parts, and you know for sure that which is going to go will make Hashem very happy. So the fifth parak, the fifth Mishnah in the fifth parak of Pirkei Avos is 10 miracles were made for our forefathers in the Beis Hamikdash, continuously happening. And then the Mishnah enumerates 1, Lohi Pila, a woman pregnant woman never lost a child because of the fragrance of the carbon. So the first shot in the Mishnah is that when the pregnant woman gets a craving, you have to feed her. That even if it's a craving, you can't stop it from the toilet. But he says no, it means that's one shot. The other shot is no, that any woman who ever got a whiff of the kedusha of the carbonis, guaranteed that she would always have a healthy child, etc. Second qualification, there was never a piece of meat that became rotten in the base of Mikdash. The base of Mikdash was in essence a tremendous slaughterhouse, protecting animals every day, bringing carbonas and parts. It says the miracle was that the kedusha of the base of Mikdash made sure that every piece of meat that was produced, every single day base of Mikdash, would always get either processed or eaten, and there would never be a piece that becomes rotten. There was never a fly found in the slaughtering, the part of the base of Mikdash was set aside for slaughtering, which is another amazing thing. We know wherever there's any food particles left out, you got dozens of flies, and here it was a section of the base of Mikdash which was slaughtering, so it was blood, etc. There was no flies in the base of Mikdash. The ear carried the kohen b'yom Kippur, and the kohen gadol never became tamei with the seminal this discharge on Yom Kippur. And the rains never extinguished the fire on top of the mizbeach, the wood that was burning. And the wind never dispersed the smoke that was rising up from the carbonis or from the keteris. And there was never a psul in the bringing of the armor, which was on the morning after the first night of Pesach. Nor the two loaves of bread that were brought put set aside on Shavuos. Or in the lechem upon him, there was never a time, never with any of the loaves of the lechem upon him, never became possible. They would stand pressed together on Yom Kippur, shoulder to shoulder. That means that the people who were short, their feet were dangling because they were lifted up by the pressure of the crowd. When it came to bow down to hear when they heard the Shem Meforish from the Kohen Gadol, there was always enough room because at that point everybody said vidui, and nobody was able to hear each other's vidui. And nobody is ever harmed by a serpent or a scorpion in Yerushalayim, ever. And nobody ever said that I don't have place to sleep. It's too tight for me to sleep in Yerushalayim, which meant that during Shalosh Regolim, where there were thousands of people who were coming into Yerushalayim, nobody did not have a place to sleep. These are 10 miracles that the Mishnah enumerates that happened in the base of Mikdash. There's lots of questions. Some of these don't seem to be so miraculous. Sure that no woman ever miscarried. That's a pretty amazing statistic. But that no meat ever got rotten in the base of Mikdash. There was nothing ever stayed around by the midnight. Everything was burnt. It wasn't consumed. It was burnt. Ever happened? It never happened. They were extremely careful. That's a miracle? I guess you could say it's a miracle for Jews to keep a place clean. Dr. Ben is a test to that. It's not to almost takes a miracle to keep some place clean, correct? But still, the Kohanim were Zrizim, and there were thousands of Kohanim in the base of Mikdash. Okay, so it's a nice thing to know, but that's a miracle. Nisim, it's part of the Nisim. A little bit hard to say, a little bit hard to understand. When there was no flies, that's amazing. That a kohen never became tamei from a seminal discharge if you just read the nusach of the Tefillah on Musaf on Yom Kippur, they didn't let him sleep for 24 hours. He was surrounded by Kohanim who were constantly keeping him awake and teaching him. And why is that considered a miracle? But the whole effort to keep the Kohen Gadol and his integrity, you're calling that a miracle? Okay, we'll accept it's a miracle. But how does that make a miracle? But that the rain never extinguished the fire. That's a miracle. Rain extinguishes Yerushalayim, gets heavy rains. Never affected the fire on the Mizbeach. But and that the wind, and there's always winds in Yerushalayim, never dispersed the smoke from the Mizbeach. That's the miracle. That they were never psul. Also, it's a question of these were parts of the avodah with which Kohanim was reason. Kohanim were extremely diligent, and if so, okay, it's amazing that over a period of almost 900 years of avodah beis hamikdash, there was never psul in any of the Lechem and the Omer. Okay. It's a beautiful statistic, and it's worthy of praise. Why is it called? Why is this called miracles? The fact that the walls of the space was always enough, became great enough for people to bow down when they didn't have enough room even to move one shoulder to shoulder. A miracle. But here's Yerushalayim: serpents, scorpions didn't cause any harm. Okay, that's a pretty amazing protection. And nobody ever said I don't have a place to leave Yerushalayim, is really would be in lay terms an attribute to the accommodations of Yerushalayim, that the people always made room for all the guests, for all the oilim, for the shalosh regalim. But at first we never say I don't have a place to leave Yerushalayim. That's a base. So these are some of the questions on the language of this Mishnah. So I saw it brings down a word from Kedush Levi of Lev Yitzchak Bedichev when it says the Azal told the Gemara in Tainus, and this is brought down Shulchan Aruch that whoever mourns for Yerushalayim will merit to see it in a time of joy. So normally we interpret that Gemara as being a promise. Whoever expresses mourning in Golus will zech to see the Mashiach coming and will be able to enjoy the simcha of the Beis Hamikdash. But this Rav Mekdushas Levi on Megillas Eicha says yes, of course, there's a promise for the future. But this is a definition. If you feel the pain of what you're missing because of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, then that feeling will allow you to appreciate the things that Hashem gives you and the promise that there will be a Beis Hamikdash. It's not a future, it's a present tense. Whoever mourns for Yerushalayim, this as now, merits to see now what the joy of as we see the rebuilding of Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it adds that word adds a perspective to the source of Klal Yisrael. When we see them, we can say, okay, now what we're seeing with these difficulties is how Hashem is bringing Yerushalayim, Klal Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael. And just in terms of simple terms of what's the events that are happening, you only have to open our eyes, we would see it. He brings a beautiful story. One of the great Rebbes of pre-World War I was Shimon Yaroslav. Shimon Yaroslav was one of the older generations before World War I, late 100s, at least from my. that Shimon Yaroslav was known to be a person of great emotional expression. And from Rosh Chodesh of Tisha B'Av, Shimon always make sure that there were siyum and stuff. And he would always have places of meals during 9 days. The minig of Chasidim is to say before benching shermalers. It didn't say on the Haaretz Bavel. But Shimon of Yaroslav, when he would have the meal, the siyum and the suda during 9 days, and before benching, he would say Al Haaretz Bavel, and he would cry bitter tears. You can't hear, Ezra? Is there any reason why Ezra can't hear? I know his microphone is turned off.
I can hear, but it's breaking up a little bit.
Oh, that's I don't know. My internet connection is pretty good here.
Okay. It may be the Rebbe needs to talk more towards the mic, or maybe some background.
Okay.
That sounds a little clearer.
All right, I'll move it a little bit closer. So Shimon of Yaroslav, one of the great rebbes in the 1800s, when it came during the 9 days, he would make a fleshik meal. He would have a siyum, have fleshik meals. And he would say before benching, instead of saying Shir Malos, which was the minhag of Chassidim to only say Shir Malos, and during the 9 days he would say Al Haaretz Bavel. The capital talking about the bemoaning of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And he would cry bitter tears. Reb Cheskel Shraga Halberstam, the Shini Baruch, heard about this, and he said, he wants to hear how deep the pain. He understood that Shimon was a little older than him. That he wanted to hear how one of the older Rebbes would weep at the saying with this capital till him. So he arranged for a trip. The next time he took a trip, that during the 9 days he would end up in Yaroslav. But the Shini Baruch was a big Bal Halacha, so he didn't like this idea. He never was really liked the idea too much of the making them siyum and eating fleishiks during the 9 days. So he arranged to stay at stay at the house right next door to the Rebbe, and he arranged for one of the Chassidim, Shalom Reb Shleimer, and he arranged for one of the Chassidim to as soon as the Rebbe gets done with the meal, right before he says Al Haaretz Bavel, to come and call him, so he could hear how Reb Shimon Yaroslav was saying. Can you hear? Al Haaretz Bavel. He said what it was like to hear somebody crying bitterly when he said Al Haaretz Bavel. And he sat there and he heard the tears and the weeping of Reb Shimon Yaroslav when he said Al Haaretz Bavel during the 9 days. And by the time he was done, he says, you know what? I really wish that I had allowed myself, I should have sat down and had a flesh meal, because anybody who could cry during Al Haaretz Bavel before benching, during the 9 days like that, that's the type of meal that you're even allowed to eat fleishiks. So when we talk about that there were 10 miracles in the Beis Hamikdash, we could look at, we read through these 10 nisim, and maybe they were such great miracles, were they just the praises of how the Avodah was? The answer is, are we yearning for the Beis Hamikdash? When we read through these 10 miracles, we say, "Oi, you know what it was like not to see a fly in the Beis Hamikdash? Do you know what it's like that there was not a single psul over all the years of the Beis Hamikdash, and the lechem upon him, and the shtei lechem, and the omer? from year to year, we're amazed by how careful the Kohanim were. That every single piece and little piece of meat, every drop of blood, every single piece of fat, every bone was accounted for in the Beis Hamikdash. And yearning to say, wow, you know what it's like, what it must have been like to be there, to see how careful the Kohanim were. That's a nace. It's a nace that it was a nace of such enormous proportions that when we look at it, we would realize what we're seeing is not just good housekeeping, but we'd be seeing that this is really the amazing part of the Kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash. And we would be yearning for the Beis Hamikdash. So he used to say that the Aug Abasim used to tell over the stories from Shimon Yaroslav. He had a connection to him, descended, I think. The Aug Abasim was one of the great Rabbonim of Hungary and Prussia. Of the Oberland, I'm sorry, not Prussia, of Oberland of Austria, Austrian-Hungarian crossover. The Aug Abasim was also known to be a man of great emotional expression, and at times would say cry his way through davening. Until his Rebbe told him, you don't have to cry the whole davening. Not so necessary. So he had one of his positions before he got to Salem, actually Chist. He was Reuben Chist. One of the previous positions was in Klein Vardain. There were two cities that were near each other. One was called Gross Vardain, the other was Klein Vardain. He was given the position Klein Vardain. Of course, like in every city, or like most cities in Klal Yisrael, there's always dissenters. There's always those who want to discount the influence of the Rav. So, Aug Abasim, though he was very much connected to the great Rebbes of his time, as a Rav, he didn't tell Chassidish Torah. He darshaned, kedarkam, like he was a Talmud Ksav Sefer, he darshaned droshes, like the derech of the Hungarian Rabbanim. Once on Purim, he had a little bit, drank as he was in the and he started espousing Chassidish Torahs and Sisrei Torah. And the Rosh HaKol was not his best friend. Sitting at the table hearing the Aug Abasim, the Rav professing great Hasidic thoughts, he says, Rebbe, this is not our derech here. How could you darshan such stuff? So he told him, he says, do you not understand the Mesiras Nefesh that it takes to teach Torah in Klal Yisrael? Do you not understand how much a Rav is willing to sacrifice for the sake of Torah for his Kehillah? He says, if Hashem would say, list off his names of his sons. If Hashem came to me and said, bring your children to me for Akedah, I would not hesitate to do it. My love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so great. You want to tell me, with my Mesiras Nefesh means to be Rav, how to say Torah? So these were, when we talk about the carefulness of the absolute Mesiras Nefesh of Klal Yisrael and the Beis Hamikdash, the Klal Yisrael would pack themselves into the Beis Hamikdash shoulder to shoulder. And by the way, nobody ever got trampled. One of the Nisim. But they picked up the people were short, so they could all be at the same height and be able to see the Avodah, to the fact that the people who were short, where their feet were dangling in the air, because of the yearning to see the Avodah Beis Hamikdash. That's the Mesiras Nefesh there was. And when it came to hear the Shem HaMefarsh, everybody had enough place to bow down. Each person could do a Sevida without his friend hearing him. You come into shul, and we have, well, I said like this, am I sitting this, is this person sitting there, is this going to make, I'm going to daven better if I hear this, if I don't, Maybe that's part of the miracle of the Beis Hamikdash, simply that Klal Yisrael could do that. They could all pack themselves into the Beis Hamikdash and be focused on the Avodah Beis Hamikdash, not on, am I socially comfortable? Because that's what the dedication of the Avodah Beis Hamikdash was about. And the stories that are told about tzaddikim, their ability to be able to rise above personal I don't know what the right word for this. Their own personal interests, and take upon themselves the Mesiras Nefesh for the sake of Klal Yisrael, only tells us that if we only pay attention to it, we would actually be able to see the amazing gift of Torah. So there's a famous story. He brings down. There's two different versions of the story, but they're almost the same. One is a story about Ramosha Koreshchover. Ramosha Koreshchover was the second son of the Chernobyl Maggid. Ramosha Koreshchover was known to be a very hidden person. In fact, for many years he refused even to be a rabbi. He traveled around as a socher. The same story is told about the Avos Yisrael of Vishnitz. Similar story. A woman came into Tisa. It could be the cap of both. Very possible. A woman came into the Rebbe, a woman who kept on having miscarriages. She kept on losing her pregnancies. And she came begging to the Rebbe that she should be able to have a child that should survive. And the Rebbe gave her bracha. He says, yes, Hashem will help you. You'll have healthy children. She says, no, Rebbe, I'm not leaving until you promise me. He says, I can promise you, I can. How can I promise you? How can I promise you that you will have a healthy child? I mean, that's up to Hashem. He says, Rebbe, I'm not leaving here until you promise me that I will have children that survive. And the Rebbe then took his jacket, he pulled up his sleeve, he says, no, give Ashmek. Says, if you believe that there's Kedusha in this world, take a whiff. If you smell Kedusha, you will never miscarry. And Hasidim were told over, and from both these rabbis, this woman never miscarried again. So we keep on trying, we have moved back away from the Mishnah in its broad sense that is talking about the amazing nisim of the Beis Hamikdash in such flowery terms. No, it's talking about things for which we can experience if we are maminim and if we look for the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash in our lives and in our own experiences. When we walk into the shul, when we walk into a Beis Hamedrash, walk into a Beis Medrash to learn, to daven, are we in awe? Are we say, Manoya Hamokim Ezeh? So in the Siddur, in the Chassidish Siddurim, they bring down for the Nusach have brought down the Siddur Ari, that when a person walks into Beis Knesset in the morning, some say even by Mincha, should say, Ma Toiv Alach Yaakov Mishkan Yisrael. That should say it even by Mincha. V'ani Brov Chazdecha. I come to you with Hashem's chesed, b'schus Abraham, who was a Isha chesed. Abraham represents chesed. It says, Ani b'reb chazra, ovei b'yisecha, el hechal kodshecha. I'm coming to the place of kedusha, b'schus Yitzchak. That put himself on the mizbech and made the makom into a makom kodesh. B'yira secha. I come to you with yira. As Yaakov Avinu said when he woke up from his dream, and he said, "Ma noira makom hazeh ein zeh akim beis elakim v'zeh sheshmayim." It's part of the nusach of the achana for tefillah. B'schus shleisha avos, I come to Kodesh Baruch Hu merit of shleisha avos. I come to see the chesed, the kodesh kedusha, the yira of ma noira makom hazeh. Where we walk into the Beis HaKnesset, the Beis HaBatim Midrashim, with a sense of awe, then the Torah that we have and the davening that we have would be a different davening. And our Torah would be of a different quality. Because we walk in and we say, okay, let's see, do I have my regular place? Or is somebody sitting in my place? Or is it, is the air conditioning on good enough? Or is there too much heat? Is there not enough heat? Is there, is the chair in the right place? Or who else is here? And we get caught up in all this stuff. But with Rebbe, can we say, Beis Elokim Nahal Berogesh. That's Chonos for Tefillah. We have yet to move ourselves to the place where we say, Ma'al Noira HaMokim Hazeh Ein Zakim Beis Elokim V'zeh Shemayim. So that the mission is reminding us, Lo Yira Keri, L'Kohen Gadol B'Yom Kippurim. The Kedusha of the Kohen Gadol was something that was so guarded that the Madrega of the Kohen Gadol, that the Yetzer Hara was trying to get him to become Tamei. Because that level of Kedusha, the Yetzer Hara is going to try and find anything that he could to stop the Kohen Gadol Kedusha. But as Chazal tell us that there is no Satan, there's no Yetzer Hara on Yom Kippur. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us one day in which we could walk into a Beis HaMedrash, they're about to daven, and be in the Beis HaMikdash. If we are ready to recognize that we're given an opportunity to one day to see what we really want to be like. We have no Yetzer Hara, we're not eating, we're not preoccupied with anything else. What is it that I want my life to look like? I want my life to look like Yom Kippur. I want the Kedusha of Yom Kippur a whole year. I know that I can't reach this level without it, but with Yom Kippur, I can at least have the vision of what it's like to maintain the Kedusha of the Kohen Gadol. So then the Mishtachim, which we've talked about, at least from last Yom Kippur, was that Bnei Yisrael, when the Klal Yisrael heard the Shema first, Yotzim Mipri Kohen Gadol, B'Kedusha B'Tahara, transcended all limitations. Space meant nothing. Space meant nothing when we had the Kedusha of the Shem HaMefarish. So it wasn't only that, it was, wow, that's pretty amazing, that everybody found enough room to bow down, so the walls stretched. That wasn't, yes, that's true. But the awesomeness of the Shem HaMefarish and what the connection of Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Shem HaMefarish does to space, to time and space, that's an amazingness. And that's available to us every time that we walk into the Beis HaKnesset, the Beis HaMedrash, and say, this is an awesome place. This is a place where the impossible can happen. Space, time, and space mean nothing when we're connected to Hashem at that Madrega. It's told over that the Apter of Rabbi Yeshua Heschel ended up being the Rabbi Mezrish, but he always kept the title of Apta because when he left Apta, the people were crying why he was leaving the town of Apta to take over the abundance of Mezhevish. So he promised them that he says, I want to let you know that I'm leaving not because I find that I'm not happy here or that I find complaints here, but because Hashem is sending me to a place where I have to accomplish more. But I will always carry the title of Rav of Apt with me. So when I'm people, they will refer to me as Apt Rav, not the Rebbe from Mezhevish. The Apt Rav once received a letter from Rabbi Kiva Eger. There was a Shan and Shuva went back and forth regarding the issues, regarding the things that were affecting Klal Yisrael at that time. And Rabbi Kiva Eger wrote in the title to Rabbi Shurashel Rash Kabahag. Rash Kabahag is Rosh Shel Kol Bnei Agoyla. A tzaddik come before, the great tzaddik known, well known. When Abdur received the letter from Kiva Eger, he went running into the Beis Medrash. He says, look what Rabbi Kiva Eger wrote about me. Look at all the titles he gave me. So one of the Chassidim said, Rebbe, isn't that a little bit arrogant? He says, no, you don't understand. The Yetzer Hara comes and bothers me every day. He wants me to do the worst of errors. Now I'm going to take out Rabbi Kiva Eger's letter to show the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara, see what Rabbi Kiva Eger wrote about me? How can I do such an avera? Rabbi Kiva Eger thinks that I'm a really great person. Right. The story only tells us that when we value our Mekaymis HaKadosh, we value Klal Yisrael coming together to learn Torah and to daven, and we value it as if we are standing in the Beis Hamikdash, then the nisim that took place in the Beis Hamikdash happened to us now. It's only because we're still attached to our own need for self-awareness, whatever the term is, that we don't take enough stock that we're walking into a place that's awesome. Nobody ever said to his friend that I don't have enough room to sleep in Yerushalayim. I don't know what the accommodations were like during the Shalosh Regalim. I don't know if they set up tents in the streets or not. But the Mishnah didn't say that there was always a place to sleep in Yerushalayim. Nobody turned to his friend and said, I'm not comfortable being here. The person said, I'm so happy to be here. There's nothing that can make me uncomfortable here. I am so happy that I'm in Yerushalayim. I'm here for Shalosh Regalim. It doesn't make a difference. Wherever I sleep, I will be happy. So nobody ever said, not that there wasn't tight accommodations. There were tens of thousands of people who arrived for Oil Regal. But nobody said to his friend, I don't have this place. Because the acceptance, the willingness to bring each other, to make each other feel strong, needs to be greater. When we treat each other that way, when we see ourselves in the place that we are walking to, Shabbos, weekdays, doesn't make a difference. And we say, that's b'yira secha. Right? That's ani b'rabchazcha over v'secha ashtachva echel kodshecha b'yira secha. That's what gives us true yira shemayim. Let us take upon ourselves that we're now going into Chodesh Elul, and as I've said out a Kol Kari, at least on the shul chat, that we should all get together for Yom Kippur Kotten. And I called Rabbi Leaf, and he welcomed us. He said, come, let's say it, because there is a minyan, usually about 40 people come for Yom Kippur Kotten at the good. And I said, okay, so we'll join. So he says, yes. He says, Rabbi, you're going to lead the davening. I said, listen, I don't need to lead the davening. He says, no. He wants that to do with it. He's insisting. But if I will or not will depend upon, I have to depend upon Gaboim. Depends on the Gaboim with the shul. But nevertheless, we're at a point in which Yom Kippur Cotton, either as a Yom Tefillah or Yom Tainus, is so valuable that even the Chassidim that did not keep a Yom Kippur Cotton kept Erev Chodesh Elul, Yom Kippur Cotton, because we're about to enter into a place where the time is Manoira Hamokam. I said, this time that we're entering into is an awesome time. That we step into Chodesh Elul, with an awesomeness which says, Kodesh Baruch says, I see how much you are yearning for the Beis Hamikdash. Be'ez Hashem, you'll be zeichet to the Beis Hamikdash. I say, Netai Ma'aseh Yoda L'Spor. Planting a seed, I want you to be proud of what you're going to have. Kodesh Baruch will give us a Kedusha that will end up in Yerushalayim listening to Abaydas. We'll stand together with our shoulders pressed against each other. And we'll be Mishtach B'Rabachim B'Shem when we hear the Shem HaKadosh Yitzim Kikayin Gadol. Everybody have a wonderful Shabbos and a great week. And Rez Hashem, we will learn again next week.
Amen. A beautiful Shabbos.
Amen.
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos, good Shabbos.
Shabbos.